Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you chose to join us tonight. As you know, this is an annual event where we are celebrating the founding of Jacksonville, Hadassah. June 1st, 1925, we received our chapter charter, and we have proudly been supporting Hadassah for 97 years to this very day. And in celebration of that, we have started this program called Why Didn't I Ask? Some of us are very lucky to still have older members of our family available to us to ask all of those sniggly questions of how did that happen and who was that and I forgot Uncle's name. And this is an event where we encourage you to have those kinds of conversations with members of your family, and where we are very excited to be able to present to all of us one of those fascinating stories of Jacksonville Jewish history. Before we begin tonight, I want to also thank everyone who participated in Hadassah's campaign to aid the people of the Ukraine. We have together raised over $1 million, which enables HMO, the Hadassah Medical Organization, to send a medical team to Ukraine and to Poland every 14 to 17 days. The 9th team is on its way. And the dollars are available to continue to do that. So we are very, very grateful to everyone who participated. And now I invite you to sit back and listen in on a conversation that is happening on the couch between two members of the same family. It's cousins who are chatting with each other. Stacey Goldring and Gail Greenfield are going to lead us through their family history. Jacksonville would be a very different place were it not for the Safer family to have been here. And we send a special shout out to all the members of the Safer family who have chosen to join us tonight. And with that, Stacey and Gail, we're listening and you settle in on your couch.
Thank you so much, Goldie. What a beautiful introduction. And thank you to Hadassah and to Helen Hill and to everyone who made this program tonight possible, including research provided by cousin Marlene Sussman. I want to start this evening by telling you that sitting in front of a camera and talking about yourself is super uncomfortable. It's incredibly vulnerable. And when someone agrees to do it, they place a large amount of trust in you. So I'm incredibly grateful that Gail trusts me to sit on the sofa virtually with her and talk about why we feel that she truly epitomizes what we're trying to do with this program, which is to show the beauty and amazing stories that are right here within Jacksonville in every member of Hadassah. Gail, you wanted to say a few words, so go ahead and I can't see you, but go ahead and unmute. And if you have any questions for Gail, go ahead and throw those in the chat and I'll make sure we'll try to get to those too. So cousin Gail, would you like to say a few words before I go ahead with my my 60 minutes interrogation with you?
I think she just sent me a message that she got knocked off. Here she comes again.
Okay.
She was having some problems with her internet.
Okay, do you want to bring up the PowerPoint while she's signing back on?
Sure.
Okay, Gail, go ahead and unmute.
Oh my gosh. I had this problem earlier and I was hoping that it would go away, but
Well,
it hasn't.
It's not a problem because what we're going to do is we'll just make up stories about you. If
Good. That's so
well,
much better.
how's
than
that?
teaching. Am I
Okay.
gone again?
No, you're there. We're just
Oh, you're
pulling up
there. I'm
the
just trying to
PowerPoint.
share screen.
just pulling up the
Whoa,
PowerPoint.
whoa, sorry. All right.
So
It
can I
worked
say
in
a few
practice.
words? Can I
Why
say a
don't-
few words?
Yeah,
while we're-
go right
Please
ahead.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay, just in case I never get a chance to say anything else, I want to tell you how grateful I am that you asked me to do this presentation, how grateful and how honored that so many of the people who have made my life so meaningful are here tonight. And I want to especially thank Helen and Stacey for all their hard work in putting this together.
Well, Gail, Goldie really teed it up so nicely for us because she explained that this is about Jacksonville history, and your family, our family, is such an integral part of the Jewish Jacksonville story and identity. I'd like to start off and just have a bit of background, and you can go ahead and tell us just a little bit about how we got to where we are today, starting off with maybe the first Jewish synagogue in Jacksonville, and take it from there.
Okay, so the first Jewish synagogue in Jacksonville was a Habit Hesed, but eventually they affiliated with the Reform movement. And when that happened, there was a group of people who still wanted to be Orthodox. And quite a few of those early people were from Lithuania, either from Pontovitz or Pushalot. And as that number grew, they formed their own synagogue, B'nai Israel, and that was formed in 1901. And once they were established, they wanted a rabbi. So they wrote to their rabbi in Pontovitz, which was my great-grandfather, and asked him to come. And he said, no, I'm too old. I'll send my son. And that was my grandfather, Benjamin Safer. So he came to Jacksonville, and not only was he the rabbi, but he was the moil and the shochet, and he had a kosher meat market. And eventually he and his wife, of course, had 12 children, and all his brothers and sisters came, and they had children, and they all had grandchildren.
I think we may have lost Gail again, so we'll wait for her to sign back on.
Okay.
But while she does that, I can kind of just, I'll play color here and let you know that another reason why her great grandfather did not want to come to Jacksonville was because he was an incredibly religious man, and he would only leave Pontovitz in order to go to Jerusalem, in order to go back to Israel. And he felt that America just was not kosher. So that's why he sent one of his 5 sons, and that would be Gail's grandfather, the Reverend Benjamin Safer. And just another interesting anecdote while we wait for Gail to sign back in is that the Reverend Benjamin Safer signed a contract to fill all those roles when he first came to Jacksonville. And it was, I believe, Elias Pilton who signed that contract. And Elias Pilton happens to be part of one of my dear friend, Meryl Rittenberg, that's part of her family. So it's a very small family that Jacksonville is very small, even though we're a very big city. It's very small when it comes to the Jewish community. Can anyone?
Back?
Yes, there you are. Perfect.
Okay.
So just pick up exactly where you left off. So they had 12 children.
Right. And so we had this tremendously large, wonderful extended family, the Safer, Follis, and Witten family. And that really, being part of all that, really instilled in me a great love of family.
And how about Israel?
Well, besides my grandfather being, so devoted to Judaism. Well, should we do this slide or?
Sure, you can talk about this. Talk about these locations and how they were important to your family.
Okay, so when my father was young, a lot of people don't know that there was no bridge over the St. Johns River. And they had to take a ferry. And one of the things that these young people loved to do was to take the ferry to Southside, take the train to the beach, and go dancing on the pavilion.
Those are beautiful images. And
Oops,
thank
sorry.
you. Oh, that's okay. You can go ahead and explain this image here.
Okay, so this was my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. And again, like I said, family was just so wonderful to me. And one of my favorite memories was all of us in my grandparents' home for the Passover Seders. And those kinds of experiences, I think, are what really concretized my love of Judaism.
Gail, now I'm guessing you're in the first row, right?
Yes, I might be one of the smallest ones.
And I think we have some people here with us this evening that are also in the first row. Isn't that right?
Yes. Marlene is here and Marilyn.
That's right. It's a very small world. Now, your grandfather shared the same love for Israel that his father did. And can you tell us a little bit about his relationship with Israel? Right.
So I would say that my grandfather was a very passionate Zionist. And this picture is of his first trip to Israel, and that is the port of Haifa. And that was in 1925. So he would live in Israel for a couple of years at a time and then come back to the States, then go back for a few more years. And he wanted to move to Israel. He wanted to make Aliyah, but my grandmother wouldn't go because she didn't want to leave the children. So I think that also my deep love of Israel came from my grandfather. And one of my most cherished possessions is a postcard that he sent me from Israel. And it was made out to Abigail Safer, where that was the name he gave me, but my parents changed it to Gail. And he, in the postcard, he asked me if I was a good girl.
He actually wrote to all 12 of the children and their spouses, and he wrote obviously to the grandchildren too. He was a prolific writer and he had beautiful handwriting, and we're fortunate that all of his materials are available at the beautiful Price Library of Judaica at the University of Florida in the family collection. So we're very fortunate. So you've talked a little bit about your grandparents. Could you tell us about your parents?
Well, this is a picture of my mother and father at River Garden. And another thing I feel like I really got from my parents was sort of a love to be of service and to be able to see things, see where a need is, and then to actualize it. So my mother used to visit River Garden when her mother was a resident, and she looked around and she saw there were no activities for the residents. And she started the hobby shop, and she brought in people to teach them to paint, and they did ceramics, and they did all kinds of plays. And after she passed away, my father continued on, and he had the rhythm band. So really they left quite a what's a good word?
They left you quite a legacy of being involved in the community.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And didn't I remember when I first met your father, he was delivering kosher LePesach groceries.
Right.
Didn't he used to have that type of job too, or did he just do that to do that?
Well, he was somewhat of a jobber. He would put, he had different products he would put in the grocery store. But in those days, there were no Passover or, foods in the grocery store. So he would take Passover orders and he would deliver them to everybody in Jacksonville that wanted them. And then he also, for many, many, many years, cooked breakfast for the Sunday morning minions.
At River Garden or at the?
At the center and then Beshalom.
Oh, wow. Your life reflects Jewish geography that extends way beyond the state lines. But before we go there, I just want to take a look at that. If you could bring up the image of Gail as just a cute as a button little girl, and we can talk about some of your early influences.
Right. So it's very easy for me to see how much my early childhood influenced my life. So around this adorable age of 8, I started visiting my next door neighbor, Frances Joseph. And I would watch in awe as she took care of her babies. She had one son after another. And I would just sit there and talk to her and keep her company and watch her breastfeed these babies. And just at that age, it just really was the most awesome thing and beautiful thing I had ever seen. So little did I know that that was going to be a big, important path of my life.
Can you tell us, give us, I just fleshed it out a bit. What part of town are you in? What neighborhood? Where is Gail doing this? What street is she running up and down?
This is on Delwood Avenue, which is Riverside. And in quite a few of my Jewish friends lived on the same street. So I noticed that Arlene Vandroff is here, and she was one of my neighbors on Delwood Avenue, as were quite a few other Jewish families. But I was going to tell you about this other picture.
Yes.
I don't know if you can ask me, but this was all of us girls. This was a very large group of Jewish girls who grew up together. And I think someone told me this is a Queen Esther contest. And I know that the person sitting next to me is Sandra, used to be Setzer, and she's here. And I would say at least half of these girls' ancestry came from these cities in Lithuania.
And Gail, in fact, there used to be, and there's, I was recently featured in Jax Today. There was a Push-a-Lotter society, the name of the town, either Panavizhis or Push-a-Lot, where these families came from. And there was like you'd have an Italian American club. There was a Push-a-Lot club where you went for help that eventually became like an alliance. And of course, now today we have the JCA. But yeah, the roots all going back to this Litvak Lithuanian heritage. So what else can you tell us? And then of course I want to get to Stanley.
Okay. The only other thing is that several of us still meet up every year. And I don't know if Rini is here watching this, but Rini sets up a Zoom meeting like once a month. And then once a year, we try to get together for a weekend. And this year, although I was younger than everybody else because I skipped a grade, they celebrated their 80th birthday.
So you will always be the baby.
I'm always the baby.
Love that. Little Abigail.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about Savannah.
Okay. So this is when, so this is when all of the synchronicity really affected my life. So when I was like 13, I went to Savannah for the bar mitzvah of one of my cousins. Two of our uncles lived in Savannah. And there I met a couple of girls who were my age. And one of them said, why don't you come back this summer and spend some time with me? So I said, sure, why not? And here I'm 13 years old. I'm so mature. My parents put me on a train and I go to Savannah. It's amazing when you think about it. So the gal who I was staying with was actually dating Stanley at the time. So I met him and, but I met some other boys and we really had a good time. We had such a good time. We went back the next summer. So Stanley it's a Saturday. He's coming home from work. He notices that he needs gas and he ends up at a gas station way past his house. And he's thinking, why am I here? Why am I at this gas station? Why don't I go to the one that I always go to near my house? But he goes ahead and he starts pumping his gas. And then this other guy drives up. I remember his name, Tommy Bloomingfield. And he says, oh, Stanley, I'm going to Beverly's house. Please, please come with me. Then we can leave when I want to leave. And so Stanley said, no, I'm tired. I want to go home. I want to rest. He said, no, you have to go with me. You have to go with me. So he gives in and he comes. And at that time, he wasn't dating Beverly anymore. And he took a look at me and later he told me that I had grown up. And we started talking and that was it. So we, started dating. I was all of 14 and he was almost 18.
You mentioned synchronicity, and throughout this entire journey, this seems to happen to you over and over again. And I love how you make yourself aware and capture these moments and see them for what they are. You're quite the inspiration. And you're a person.
Yeah, and I thought of some more things. I'm sorry.
Oh, detail, please.
Okay, so as we were dating, I found out a lot more in terms of synchronicity. That when he was growing up, he lived in an apartment above the Safer Meat Market of my Uncle Abba's. And he and Abba would sing in the choir together. And then backing it up even further, his parents eloped to get married. And where did they come? They came to Jacksonville. And who married them? My grandfather.
Small world. If you can go ahead and put up the next slide, Helen, that'd be great. Well, we're going to kind of, as we all know, it's a very happy story because you and Stanley obviously now are decide to start a family. And Gail, every person on this call and every person who has known anyone who has gone into labor and delivery with their wife or their daughter or their friend or whatever, they have you to thank. And I want you to tell them why. I want you to tell them why it is not a solitary experience for a woman to go into labor on her own with no family members.
Well, you see, there I am with a clock when I was going to the hospital with my first child. So I was so determined then, I wanted natural childbirth, but I was so determined to breastfeed because of that experience that I had had as a child, when not very many women were breastfeeding. So I was, determined and stuck it out and was pretty successful. And then I found that other women were interested and they would call me and I would, give them hints and tell them what I did. And I started reading more and more. And then I decided, well, we really need to have a La Leche League in Jacksonville. So I was all excited because I thought, oh, I want to be a La Leche League leader. But then when I applied, I found that I was not qualified because I had not delayed solids. Then at that point, the pediatricians were in favor of bottle feeding and giving solids starting in a month. But then, fortunately, I ran into Barbara Titleman, who's here on the call. And she had done a lot more research and she knew the value of delaying solids. So she applied and she became the La Leche League leader, and I was her helper. So one of the meetings that we would have would talk about natural childbirth and how that's better for the baby and how it's easier to get breastfeeding started when you have a baby that's not sedated. So then, of course, we had to start the Childbirth Education Association. And that picture is with Pat Ellis, who synchronistically moved next door to me. And she was also interested in breastfeeding and childbirth. So together with her and Pat and a ton of other people, we started the Childbirth Education Association. And then we started working with the doctors and the hospitals to allow fathers in labor and delivery. And Stanley was the second father to ever be in delivery in Jacksonville when our third daughter, Deborah, was born.
And we have to think about how far we've come. And you were such a trailblazer back then. I mean, this is a time where it's, the National Organization for Women and, trying to get equal pay, which still hasn't happened. And books like Our Bodies, Ourselves. I mean, you, Gail, were at the forefront of this. And it's just, thank you. Absolutely, on behalf of women everywhere, thank you. I don't know if we can still use the word woman. I'm going to use it. So
Yeah.
soon. Anyway. Okay. So now I want to, let's all now go to the next step in your life and talk about nursing and health for women. And where does that lead you next?
Okay, so you are right. This was exactly the time of the women's movement. And I decided I needed to have a career. And because of all this experience I had had with breastfeeding and childbirth education, I decided that I wanted to be a nurse and I wanted to work in this field of maternal child so that I could help guide new mothers to breastfeed successfully. So I went to nursing school, and once I finished nursing school, I was found out that opened many, many doors. And one of them was to be a nurse at Camp Ramah because my children were going to camp there. And so being at camp, which was probably one of the peak experiences of our lives, being in a utopian Jewish environment, really led us eventually to want to live in Israel. But I have to make one comment about that picture. When we got to Camp Ramah, I was expecting to see this huge sign, Camp Ramah, and there was no sign. So Stanley made that sign, which I hope they're still using it.
Amazing. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here with us that also have memories of Ramah. And what does Ramah do? But it connects us. It makes that connection. It builds that bond. It nurtures that love that we have for Israel that you had coming from your family, going back to your great grandfather and grandfather, etc. So now tell us about the odyssey of the Greenfields go to Israel. And we're talking about Palmer, Evelyn. We're talking about Camp Ramah, Palmer, and that's in the Berkshires, if I'm correct.
No, it's in Palmer, Massachusetts.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is in Palmer, Massachusetts. Okay, my mistake. Okay, so let's talk about the Israel chapters.
So Stanley first went to Israel on a Federation mission. I think it was about 1972, and he came back and he was so excited about Israel. He said, we're going to Israel. We're going to take a trip. So he and I took a trip, I guess, a couple of years later. And then I too, we both were just so in love and so passionate about Israel. I say that I look at Israel through rose-colored glasses. So then the next thing was that we planned a family reunion to Israel in 1977. So all of these experiences and being at camp made us decide that we wanted to make Aliyah. So in the summer of 1981, I didn't go to camp, and we went to Israel. So we decided that we would travel the country and see where the best place for us to live and to be in an absorption center. And we started working with a shaliach from Miami to try and take care of all of the details that one needs to take care of to move to Israel.
Because clearly Miami, you can trust anyone there to make any types of plans for you ever. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I wouldn't go quite that far. So what happened was we leased our house out and we're packing up, and some stuff is going to Israel. Some of it is staying here.
Where are you living in Jacksonville at this time?
In Mandarin.
Oh, that's
close to where you live.
That's right.
And then right before we leave, Stanley calls the shaliach and he says, I have all this documentation and everything, but I don't have anything that says, oh, here are the Greenfields, coming there. And he says, oh, I'll send it to you. And of course, in Israeli, he says, Hakol Seder. Well, Stanley says, no, it's not Hakol Seder. He said, I need to have something so that they know to let us in. So he flew here and he contacted Israel. There was no cell phone then. There was no, the only way they communicated was through telex. And the telex he sent, they said, oh, well, you said something about the Greenfields, but it didn't come through. We figured if it was important, you would send it again. So we go off to camp and we don't have a place to live. So we were a little despondent, as you can imagine. And we just decided that, we really wanted to live in a place where there was a large Jewish community. So instead of making Aliyah to Israel, we made Aliyah to Rockville, Maryland.
A natural next choice. And what else? And this is where your life with Hadassah started too, right?
Well, I actually had joined Hadassah in 1971.
Oh, okay.
But and I was probably involved, during those years, but I don't really have much recall of that. But I must have been involved because when we moved to Maryland, I joined the chapter and eventually I was president of that chapter. But
of course,
all of that is still pretty vague in my memory.
Okay, so tell us about your career and what was life in Rockville like?
Well, I was very fortunate to start to work at this wonderful, wonderful hospital, Shady Grove Adventist Hospital. And I started off working as a nurse on postpartum, and was just so wonderful working with mothers and babies. And I really just had this deep philosophy that, how I treated the mother would have a ripple effect on how she related to her baby. So I gave them as much love and attention as I could. And then I became now it's a nurse manager. Before then it was head nurse. And then an opportunity opened up to be the coordinator of the health education department, which I was very fortunate to get. And we did, all of these programs and health education, which of course is something that I'm very interested in, but many of them were maternal child programs. And so there's a picture of me, I'm with a baby. And so I'm doing probably either a childbirth class or a sibling tour or something like that. And then the other thing that sort of opened up was a lot of friends wanted me to coach them through childbirth. So this is one of the friends that I coached during childbirth, and she's smiling now. And while we were in Maryland, I was also, very involved Jewishly. They had so many Jewish scholars that came and spoke, and fabulous adult education. But also it was the era of the New Age movement. And all my life, I was sort of like searching spiritually to really, find sort of answers and connections. And so I spent a lot of time going to yoga ashrams and taking yoga and doing Buddhist meditation, and became a Reiki master. So I took advantage of everything that Maryland had to offer, Rockville, Maryland had to offer.
And if I recall, hearing other Safer family members talk about their memory of the Reverend Benjamin Safer, your grandfather, he would have been incredibly welcoming to your spiritual journey. From what I understand, he was non-judgmental when it came to what type of Judaism you chose to practice. Did I dream this, or does this seem like this is something that rings true to you?
Yes, I think so, because as time went on, none of the children really remained Orthodox, but he never chastised anybody for their practices. His philosophy was, I do what I do, and then, in other words, he led by example, but he did not have expectations for anybody else. But yeah, that would be interesting to think about how he would see like the different paths that I took. But this was also the time that I flourished Jewishly and wrote the poem play and a Tu B'Shvat Seder, and really, relished celebrating the holidays in to me, an exciting way.
I think you channel and you manifest his, love of Judaism through your own talents. I think it's quite evident that that neshama is, with you. So let's, you are such a nurturer of bringing life into the world, and that would be enough for anyone's lifetime, but not yours, Gail. So where did you decide to focus on next?
Well, I did a workshop with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and you have a quote up here that says, dying is an integral part of life, as natural and predictable as being born. And after this workshop, this little 5 foot, maybe 9 woman pounded on the podium, and she said, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that there is life after death. So that was like the first time I had ever heard anybody speak of that. And Stanley said, I came home and my eyes were just totally bugged out. But, looking over my life, I see how different influences sometimes it can be just one person saying something or hearing a statement like that. And then after that, I was really interested in the field of death and dying. So there was a time when I made a change in career and started working in hospice.
Okay, and so let's go ahead and just kind of tell us where hospice leads you and how we end up coming back to Jacksonville,
Okay,
by way of Albany.
Well, we did Jacksonville first, and then Albany, and then back to Jacksonville.
Right, so,
So when we moved back to Jacksonville in about 1997, I sort of had been involved a little bit in the Jewish healing movement, was really just starting in Maryland. And so I came back to Jacksonville and I met up with, a few different people in the community. And I think I saw Beth Shorstein on, and another one was Jack Mizrahi, and I think Helen was involved. And we sort of did a community survey to see if we thought there was a need. And we were quite surprised to see that there really was a need. And so with Jewish Family and Community Services, we started the Jewish Healing Network, where we train volunteers sort of after the model of the volunteer training at hospice to be a companion to seniors. And in that, I can see in this picture Barbara Teitelman, who was also became active in it, and Susan Seidel, who also might be here today. And so it was really a wonderful, wonderful program. And then from there, at that time, I was again very fortunate to start a complementary care program at hospice. So I had
explain complementary care.
Okay. So I had been working at hospice as a nurse, and then I had been talking to the director of hospice about the idea of a complementary care program, which means that in addition to the wonderful compassionate care that the patients receive, there were like alternative things that also could be, that they could receive, like Reiki. So mainly what I did was I trained volunteers and staff to do so that they could give the patients Reiki treatments. So like when I was in Maryland working in hospice, the medical director would tell his patients that the ones that I had as patients, oh, tell Gail to do Reiki on you.
Gail,
So,
could you explain what Reiki is?
okay, Reiki is an ancient Tibetan healing system that channels energy through your hands, and it has a mostly the most important component to it, to me, that I've used is that it really helps people go into a deep state of relaxation so that they feel peaceful. And it works on every level. It works on the physical level. Like for instance, if you hurt yourself, then I can put my hands and it'll make the discomfort go away or be better. It works on the psychological level and it works on the spiritual level.
You truly are a master. I would, and also Stanley was also a Reiki master, right?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so so you start doing all these things in Jacksonville that have to do with hospice and complementary care. I don't know, I'm afraid to say, but what's next? Because I know there's more, because then you move to Albany, Georgia.
Yeah. So we moved to Albany, Georgia, because our daughter lived there and we really wanted to be hands-on grandparents. And Nathan there was 3 and Josie was just born like a week after we moved there. But, I'm not going to sit idly by and just be a grandparent. I've got to, get out there and do some other things. Now, and this came about, this wasn't my idea, but, because I had just done a program with Reiki, one of the nurses I knew at the hospital asked me if I could start a Reiki program for the cancer patients on the chemotherapy unit. So what I did was I recruited all these women here in this picture, and only one of them has the little vest that we wore on, and taught. Some of them already knew Reiki, some of them we taught, and they would, 2 of them would go up at a time each day and do Reiki on patients, and sometimes they would do hand massages if they didn't want Reiki. And if you're looking at the picture, the woman there who's in the sort of turquoise, I don't know if Peggy Ashley is there, if Peggy's on this call, but Peggy was one of the women who way back when taught the childbirth education classes with Barbara Teitelman. So people just keep coming back in my life. And when I moved to Albany, she had already moved there years before, and she had a grandson that was same age as Nathan. And then the woman there who has the dog is Finn Taylor, and she also had a son that was the same age as Nathan. And so I had like 2 great friends that we could go and take our grandchildren and our son and have a great afternoon playing after we picked them up from school.
So what came next?
Well, then Stanley and I felt he was getting ready to retire, and we really wanted to go back to Israel. So we decided to do this volunteer program, which actually both our daughters had done when they were like in college. So we went to Israel, and we did this volunteer program where you volunteer on a non-combat base, and you work during the day. You go to flag raising in the morning. You eat in the cafeteria, and then you just work all day, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience because you meet people from all over the world who all just have this incredible love of Israel. And you feel like you're really doing something to help the country. And the other feeling is that you're really learning about the country from the inside out.
Yeah, and that is another theme in your life. You're not someone to go on a cruise or just hike a trail. When you travel the world, you are really traveling it from the inside out. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes. Well, obviously, I like intense experiences. That's why I think why I was attracted to birth and death. I mean, like you really get to feel life. And so these volunteer experiences, as much as we've traveled, and I think I counted it up, that we went to 47 different countries, and we did do cruises and, different kinds of travel. But these volunteer travel experiences were the most phenomenal of all. And we went to India and we took care of elephants. And then the other picture is South Africa, where we took care of these tiny little orphan monkeys. And then, so the other picture is Thailand. We didn't really take care of those tigers, but we did get to hold them.
Beautiful, really beautiful. Wow. Let's kind of now focus on Hadassah and what role, how that was woven into your life, and how you're bringing the light of Jacksonville to Hadassah's hospital. Can you talk to us about that?
So I think it was the second volunteer program, we did go to Hadassah and visited Hadassah Hospital. And when we went on the patient floors, I noticed that the lighting in the hallway was like this opaque kind of covering of the bulbs. But I noticed there was like different panels, and it had names on it. I noticed one was Hadassah of Boston, and then there was Hadassah of another city, and then somebody else's name. So I said, well, how much does it cost to get your name up in lights? And they said $5,000. So I said, well, we have to get Jacksonville, Hadassah up in lights. So I came home. It's just like I was motivated and passionate, and I got on the internet and I wrote to all the Hadassah members and everybody in my family, all the people that I've known all through the years. And we raised the $5,000, but I have not yet gotten back to Israel to see our name up in lights.
I know that you have plans to go to Israel. Tell us about your upcoming plans. And when you go this time, do you plan on going to the hospital?
Yes, I definitely want to go to the hospital because I want to see several things. One of them is this, wherever our Jacksonville Hadassah's name is up in lights. And also I have a plaque at the Cancer Institute with my husband's name, who he passed away a couple of years ago from cancer. And I want to see that plaque too. And so Hadassah is very good about, you letting them know what memorials you want to see or what plaques you want to see, and they will definitely make it happen.
Oh, wow. So we've come to, we're almost ready to wrap. It's hard to believe, but can you, you're not one to sit still. And I can, I've attended many of your programs. I've been in a Seder. Yes, I've been in a Purim play. I've attended your Tu B'Shvat Seders. Certainly you and I have done several Seders together at Passover. Tell us what else you're doing in the community.
Okay, well, so after we moved back from Albany, then I really got more and more involved with Hadassah. And I'm sure Sheila Lieberman is on this program. So Sheila and I decided that we needed to do something for the women who lived at the beach in Nocatee, because a lot of the women at the beach do not want to go across the ditch, as it's said. So they don't want to go into Maryland for programs. But so we were trying to figure out what we could do to satisfy that need of the Hadassah women who lived at the beach in Nocatee. So we came up with this idea of having a Rosh Chodesh group. And we would meet once a month and really feature Jewish women who have contributed to the world, starting with biblical women. But then after a couple of years, everybody knows what happens. We had the pandemic, but it didn't stop us one moment, and we went to Zoom. And so now these last couple of years, we've been meeting on Zoom, which really opens it up to people who live in Mandarin who wouldn't come to the beach. And so, so we really are reaching a lot more people. And we have, we usually take a break during the summer, and our plan is to start up the end of August.
And what about your All in This Together group? Okay,
well, being a new widow myself, there are times when you feel like you want to go out and do something and have a good time, but there's not always a lot of people that you can do it with. And I talked to Isabel and Kathy Winterfield, and we were all widows, and we came up with this idea to have a group specifically for women who have experienced loss of their partners. So not as a group therapy or anything like that, but just so that we can get together and have enjoy each other's company and have a good time. And we started that, I guess, this year. And we've been meeting once a month, and everybody seems to really enjoy it. And it gives us an opportunity to teach people about Hadassah.
And of course, that's not all. You also have your Jewish meditation, your Jewish spirituality. You just don't stop. Well, Gail, we actually are coming up on an hour, which is so hard to believe. And I can't thank you enough, but no story would be complete unless we talk about your beautiful children and grandchildren. So please just go ahead and tell us about this beautiful slide.
So in one slide, you see Melinda, Nathan, and Josie. So Nathan was the 3-year-old in that picture, and Josie was the baby. So now Nathan's going to be 21 and Josie's going to be 18. And that's my daughter, Melinda. And again, because of my early experience with family just is so important to me. And then the other picture is Deborah, and she's the one that Stanley got to see being born. And for all of the people now whose husbands are in delivery, I think it really makes such a difference how the fathers bond with the babies. And that's Deborah and her husband, Nick, and Lily.
Well, we've sure bonded with you this evening, Gail. I want to thank you so much. You're an incredible inspiration, and I'm so glad that synchronicity also brought us together. I'm going to go ahead now and just hand it over back to Helen and Goldie. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Just incredible. I even heard stories that I hadn't heard before, so I really enjoyed it. We thank you both so very much. And if I may just take a couple of quick announcements before we say goodnight. In 2 weeks, on Wednesday, June 15th at 6:30, we are hosting, together with the young professionals and families of the Jewish Federation, a second part of a program on infertility entitled Reconceiving Infertility, the Discussion Continues. Now, I attended the first program, and even though I did not think it was something that somebody in the over 70 crowd would particularly be interested in, it was an absolutely amazing discussion. I learned so much, and I think it is a very important topic. I'm proud that Hadassah is taking part in this endeavor. It's just getting community to come together and talk, and this program will be held both in person at Jewish Family and Community Services and also on Zoom. So I will send information out about this important program. And for those readers out there, our annual summer book reviews will be beginning in July 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th, always on a Tuesday, always at 11 a.m. And we are back at the Jacksonville Jewish Center this year, which is so good to actually get back together. There will be a Zoom option for those who can't come in. So we're really, really looking forward to that. And last but not least, if you registered ahead of time at 8 o'clock immediately following this program, Hadassah is broadcasting a celebration of Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, which is also today. So June 1st isn't just the anniversary of our chapter's charter, Goldie. It's also the anniversary of the rededication of Jerusalem, when the city of Jerusalem and our two hospitals, Ein Kerem and Mount Scopus, finally came back together. I think registration is closed, but if you have registered, I'll see you in just a few minutes. So once again, thank all of you for attending tonight. Thank you so much, Gail, for letting us listening in on your family stories. And Stacey, a huge thank you. We love you. Good night.
Thank you, Gail. That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah, for being here. And Lynn, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Oh,
You'll
I
hear
forgot
from
to
me
say
tomorrow.
that I'm the regional secretary of Hadassah.
Yes, you are.
Oh, wow.